The second technique, second line now we're going down, is expectation. Now the spatial version of expectation is false connections, like red herrings, and we'll talk about that in a second. The temporal version is false progressions, non-causality. Okay, in terms of red herring, imagine, picture if you will, in The Fugitive, there are several scenes in which we are faked out by the authors of the movie to think that police are about to converge on Dr. Richard Kimball, when in fact they're really after something else completely. For example, one time Dr. Richard Kimball shows up to meet his old friend, Dr. Nichols, at his car. And Dr. Nichols is driving, he stops at a stoplight, Kimball comes out as if he's one of the street people trying to wash the windshield for $1, and he starts talking to him. A police car appears behind Nichols' car, turns on its lights and siren, and at that point it looks like they're about to converge on Kimball, when instead they zoom around the car and head off to some call that they just got, which is why they put on their siren. Elsewhere in the story, Dr. Kimball is returning to his apartment, and at the apartment we see that all of the police start converging again, maybe 6 police cars and all kinds of people with drawn weapons, and they come in on the place and we think they're about to get Dr. Kimball, when it turns out they arrive to get the son of the landlady, who was apparently dealing in drugs or something, and they weren't there for Kimball at all. So once again, it's kind of a red herring, or making a false connection, intentionally forcing the audience to think 2 things are connected or more that are not really connected at all. If you could do this with your audience, then they'll go, oh man, it's kind of a groaner is the approach that it has. I fell for that. You don't want to do it in such a way that somebody comes up and makes a connection that obviously appears to be a connection, and then has no reason for it not to be a connection except it just isn't. In that case, it doesn't make any sense. You've got to establish that there's a completely viable alternative explanation that the audience just didn't see. And once they see it, well, of course there's a reason for that happening. It's almost coincidental that we thought that they were after this person, although originally it felt like it was an absolute connection. Now the equivalent is, instead of making a connection between 2 things that appear to be related and aren't, making a connection over time that 2 things follow each other, one follows another, that really don't demand that order to themselves. There's a neat movie, a neat old movie, a short, called The Music Box with Laurel and Hardy. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's one of the funniest pieces they ever did. Laurel and Hardy are piano movers in The Music Box, and they're trying to get a piano up 2 flights, about a block long each, of stairs in the Hollywood Hills. These concrete stairs that go up and up and up to a little bungalow up at the top. So they go through one mishap after another of getting it part way up and having it roll over somebody's foot, or slip on a banana peel, or somebody sneezes, or some pollen goes down somebody's back and it itches, and as a result it goes all the way back down to the bottom again, down the steps, and they have to start all over again. Every time they almost get it up the steps, something happens and it's right back down to the bottom. This happens a number of times, so we begin to suspect that's the pattern, that's the causal relationship. Well, eventually they do get it up to the top, and when they do, they go up to put it into the bungalow and they realize that it's supposed to go to the top floor, and they can't get it in the front door. So they have to put up a block and tackle to get the piano up to the 2nd floor and push it in. So they put up the block and the tackle, and they start to raise it, and there's a big pool down below of water right outside the window. And the piano goes up and up and up, and the rope starts to strain, and the block and tackle starts to strain, and the water's going down below, and we are absolutely sure, just like before, that the piano is going to come right down and probably land in the water just the way it went down the steps. They get it right up to the top, and at the moment everything is straining the most, they push it into the room. And you laugh hysterically, because you've been had. A pattern was set up in terms of false connections, a false causal relationship that held true for a while, but there's no reason it had to hold true in this other scenario at all. So when we expect it and it turns out not to be true, that's funny. That's a great funny technique. It can also be a dramatic technique. Any of these story-weaving techniques can be used for laughs or used for serious techniques, to startle or to amuse. It's all in the telling. But As before, we had exposition where we revealed something to be larger or small over a period of time, or where over a period of time importance changed. It could happen abruptly or gradually. And then we had false connections and red herrings where two things come into juxtaposition and we're sure that they're related when they really aren't. Or the false progressions, non-causality, where things appear to follow each other always in a particular order, and then we have a scenario where it doesn't follow after all, which again can be used for drama or comedy.